Myles Garrett is just half a sack away from tying history, and the timing couldn't be more loaded. With the Browns stumbling toward another off-season of uncertainty, all eyes are on Garrett in the final game against the Bengals. He's one of the few constants in a franchise plagued by turnover, and his pursuit of the single-season sack record might be the only clear narrative in an otherwise chaotic stretch. But the Bengals know it too, and their protection schemes could easily turn Garrett's chase into a frustrating dead end, especially if the Browns' own game plan isn't built to support him. Behind Garrett's dominant season is an organization still scrambling for footing. Ownership's choices, from questionable draft priorities to leadership turnover, have left the locker room guessing. And while Garrett plays like a franchise cornerstone, the foundation beneath him remains cracked.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Unless the Browns commit to structural discipline, smarter resource allocation, and top-tier football minds in key roles, these flashes of greatness will continue to get lost in a cycle of mismanagement. Is at the center of a conversation that goes far beyond his stat line. His name keeps coming up not just because of what he's done, but because of what he represents in Cleveland's chaotic rebuild. Analysts are starting to question if the Browns are truly building around Shedeur or just buying time while the organization sorts itself out. Zach Jackson didn't hold back on this. He pointed out that while Shedeur has moments of promise, he's still raw, and the Browns aren't exactly known for their patience or structured development plans. There's concern about whether Shedeur was the right pick to begin with, or if he's another case of the Browns hoping talent will cover up a lack of direction. He's got the name, the potential, and the moments that flash, but not enough protection, not enough consistency, and not enough evidence that the coaching staff has a plan tailored to his growth. For a quarterback drafted into an already unstable environment, that's a problem that doesn't stay. In the Browns versus Bengals matchup, Shedeur was under more pressure than usual. With Myles Garrett chasing history on one side of the ball, the offense couldn't afford to stall out. But that's exactly what happened. Shedeur's performance in that game highlighted the issues Zach Jackson's been vocal about. Poor offensive line play, limited time in the pocket, and questionable decisions in key moments. The game became less about winning and more about survival. For Shedeur, it was another entry in a growing list of outings where the situation seemed stacked against him. This wasn't a case of one player underperforming. It was a symptom of systemic failure. And the Bengals' defense, sensing blood in the water, made it worse by collapsing the pocket with almost theatrical ease. Every snap was a reminder that Cleveland's quarterback strategy is anything but settled. Kevin Stefanski's future with the Browns is under heavy scrutiny, and the conversation isn't quiet anymore. There's a split between those who think he's managed well under bad circumstances and those who believe he's part of the problem. Zach Jackson made it clear that Stefanski's inability to develop a functional offense around young quarterbacks is a major concern. The lack of progress, especially with someone like Shedeur Sanders, raises red flags about his adaptability and vision. The Browns' offense hasn't just struggled. It's regressed. The decisions being made on game day, the predictability of the play calling, and the unclear offensive identity have all been stacking up against Stefanski. There's a real question about whether he's the right leader to guide a young, raw quarterback through a full development arc. Right now, the signs don't look good. During the Bengals game, Stefanski's offensive strategy was exposed again. The team looked unprepared for basic pressure packages, and there are almost no adjustments mid-game. Zach Jackson pointed out how the coaching staff failed to protect their young quarterback, both physically and schematically. It wasn't just about missed blocks. It was about missed opportunities to adapt and take control. Stefanski's seat has been getting hotter all season, but this game made it harder to justify keeping him. The team wasn't just losing, they looked confused. And when you have a quarterback like Shedeur trying to find his rhythm, that confusion turns into chaos. The Bengals exploited it, and the Browns didn't seem to have an answer. That falls squarely on the coaching. Myles Garrett has become one of the few bright spots in an otherwise turbulent season. Zach Jackson focused on Garrett's pursuit of the single-season sack record, which has become a narrative of its own. Garrett is just half a sack away from tying the record, and with every game, the pressure builds. But it's more than a stat chase. It's about legacy, and about showing that individual excellence can still shine in the middle of organizational confusion. What's frustrating, though, is that Garrett's dominant performances are often wasted. The defense shows up, he creates havoc, and yet the offense fails to capitalize. Zach didn't sugarcoat it. Garrett's work isn't being matched by the rest of the team. And that kind of imbalance makes it harder to build momentum. He's playing like someone who deserves to be on a contending team. The Browns aren't that right now. In the matchup against the Bengals, Garrett was a problem for their offensive line from the opening snap. Every play felt like a potential record breaker. Zach Jackson highlighted how Cincinnati started double-teaming Garrett early, clearly aware of what was at stake. The record wasn't just within reach, it was looming. But the more the Bengals keyed in on Garrett, the more it became obvious how much Cleveland leans on him to make anything, happen. Despite the pressure, Garrett didn't break the record in this game. But the attention he drew opened up opportunities for the rest of the defense. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. The offense couldn't convert those defensive stands into meaningful drives. Garrett did his part. The system around him didn't. Dillon Gabriel's role in the Browns' quarterback saga has come under heavy fire. Zach Jackson didn't dance around it. Drafting Gabriel was a head-scratcher from the start. He wasn't viewed as a long-term solution, yet the team spent valuable draft capital on him. And now, with the QB situation still unsettled, that choice looks worse every week. Photos and highlights from his limited appearances don't lie. Gabriel often looks overwhelmed, rushed, and out of sync with the offense. The flashes of mobility and arm strength don't compensate for the lack of experience and polish. It's a harsh spotlight for a player who probably shouldn't be on this stage yet. And the fact that he is says more about the team's planning, or lack thereof, than it does about his talent. When Gabriel has spoken publicly, the message is always the same: learning, growing, staying ready. But Zach Jackson questioned whether those learning opportunities are even being set up properly. The coaching staff doesn't seem to have a coherent plan for his development, and without that, even talented rookies struggle. This isn't just a Gabriel issue, it's a systemic one. The Browns needed to stabilize their quarterback room, and chose a route that only added more questions. Gabriel's presence isn't solving anything. It's reminding fans how many times this franchise has tried and failed to find their guy. And the more he plays, the more that draft decision sticks out as a mistake rooted in desperation rather than. Andrew Berry's role in this saga is under as much scrutiny as anyone else's. Zach Jackson criticized the front office for its lack of long-term planning. The draft strategy has been inconsistent, especially at key positions like quarterback, offensive line, and wide receiver. For every smart pick, there's been a baffling one that sets the team back a year or more. Berry has tried to thread the needle between rebuilding and competing, and the result has been a team stuck in the middle. The missed opportunities, especially when it comes to protecting young quarterbacks, have created a ripple effect. Poor offensive line depth, underwhelming receiver groups, and questionable free agent moves aren't just isolated mistakes. They're connected to a broader failure in roster construction. And now, the Browns are paying for it. Is technically still part of this roster, and his presence looms over every quarterback decision the Browns make. Zach Jackson didn't go into detail about Watson's on-field absence, but the implication was clear. The massive investment in Watson still defines the team's current reality. And it's part of why the front office feels so unstable. Photos from Watson's limited time this season are reminders of what was supposed to be a franchise-resetting move. Instead, the Browns are juggling rookie development, failed draft picks, and an uncertain coaching future, all while trying to justify one of the most controversial trades in recent NFL history. It's not just about Watson being out. It's about the hole that deal dug and how hard it will be to climb out of it. The Browns' performance against the Bengals wasn't just another divisional game. It was a snapshot of what's wrong with the organization right now. They didn't look like a team with a clear purpose. Zach Jackson's breakdown was brutal but accurate. Missed assignments, questionable coaching calls, and a general sense of unease from start to finish. It didn't matter who had the ball. The dysfunction showed up on both sides. From the opening drive, Cincinnati dictated the pace. Cleveland couldn't respond. The Bengals exposed the Browns' lack of depth, weak offensive line structure, and poorly schemed defense once Garrett was neutralized. Zach highlighted how even the simplest formations from Cincinnati forced the Browns into mismatches. And when your team looks lost against basic execution, that's not just a talent issue. It's a planning failure. Shedeur Sanders, once again, found himself in a nearly impossible situation. Zach noted how his mechanics are clearly being affected by the constant pressure. No quarterback can develop when he's running for his life every other snap. The problem isn't just Shedeur, it's that the team has no blueprint for how to help him succeed. And when asked about it, there's rarely a direct answer from the coaching staff. There's frustration growing around how the Browns are handling his progression. The lack of weapons. The revolving door of linemen. The game plans that seem designed for someone else entirely. Shedeur speaks with poise when he's in front of a mic, but it's starting to feel like he's being asked to lead a rebuild with no foundation. Zach wasn't shy about it. This isn't development. It's damage control. Kevin Stefanski's public statements haven't done much to quiet the speculation around his future. He talks about growth, resilience, and adjustments, but those words are starting to ring hollow. Zach pointed out that the coaching doesn't reflect that same growth. Game after game, the issues stay the same. Ineffective offensive identity, unpreparedness for defensive shifts, and little in the way of creative solutions. Stefanski may have had early success with the Browns, but that was a different roster, with a different trajectory. The team now is younger, more vulnerable, and needs leadership that adapts. What Zach emphasized is that Stefanski doesn't seem to be that guy anymore. He's coaching like someone who's still trying to make last year's playbook work. But this isn't last year's team. Andrew Berry has taken a quieter approach publicly, but the moves, or lack of them, are speaking louder than any press conference. Zach pointed to several missed opportunities in the draft and free agency. This isn't about one bad pick. It's a pattern of ignoring key areas of need, especially at offensive skill positions. You don't develop a young QB with a mediocre receiving core and no pocket security. The front office seems stuck in an endless recalibration loop. One year they draft heavy on defense, the next they try to patch holes with veterans, and now they're hoping rookies and practice squad signings can fix systemic issues. Zach's analysis was blunt. There's no identity in the roster construction. And without that, you're left with pieces that don't fit, and no plan to fix it. Myles Garrett continues to speak with the urgency of a veteran who knows time is limited. He's played at an elite level all year, even while dealing with injuries. But Zach questioned how long that kind of performance can last without support. The Browns have a defensive star with Hall of Fame potential, but they're wasting his prime. Garrett doesn't complain publicly, but the frustration shows. He dominates for quarters at a time, and it barely moves the needle because the offense can't follow through. Zach made the point that Garrett shouldn't have to carry the emotional weight of the team every week. He's doing everything you can ask from a leader, but leadership alone won't fix structural problems that start at the top. Stefanski's game plan in the Bengals matchup will be dissected for weeks. Zach was quick to point out how basic some of the play calling felt. No designed rollouts, no tempo shifts, and very little to keep the defense guessing. It was a static approach in a game that demanded urgency and adaptability. By the second half, it was clear that Cincinnati had solved everything Stefanski wanted to do, and the Browns had no counter. Zach described it as a stubborn game plan, stuck on concepts that weren't working. That's not how you win divisional games in the AFC North. And it's not how you convince anyone you should stick around another. In this game, Shedeur looked like a quarterback trapped in a system that doesn't suit him. Zach noted how often he was forced into bad throws, not because of panic, but because there were no real options. Routes were slow developing. The pocket collapsed instantly. And by the time he tried to scramble, the play was already broken. This wasn't a matter of inexperience. It was structural failure. Zach emphasized how the team left Shedeur vulnerable, physically and schematically. It's hard to build confidence when every series ends with pressure in your face or 3rd and long with no lifeline. The Bengals knew it. The fans saw it. And it painted a harsh picture of where this offense actually is. Dillon Gabriel's name surfaced again as Zach brought up the broader quarterback dilemma. He questioned what the plan was when the Browns drafted him. Was it just to have depth? Was he ever part of the future? So far, he hasn't shown much to suggest he's even a reliable backup at the NFL level. The concern isn't just Gabriel's play. It's what his presence says about the front office's decision-making. Spending draft picks on a quarterback you clearly don't trust enough to start when things go south signals a failure to assess value. Zach's breakdown made it clear. This wasn't strategic layering. It was a panic move. And now, they're stuck with the consequences. Deshaun Watson remains a ghost over the entire Browns quarterback conversation. His game photos feel like artifacts from a plan that no longer exists. Zach didn't delve into the off-field angles, but on the field, his absence has created a vacuum the team hasn't filled. What's worse is that every rookie mistake from Sanders or every shaky outing from Gabriel circles back to Watson's contract. The money, the expectations, the pressure, it's all still there. But the player isn't. Zach's frustration was with how the team has tried to move forward without really acknowledging the hole Watson's absence has left. And until they reckon with that, nothing will feel settled. Gabriel's NFL tape continues to raise eyebrows. Zach didn't hold back. He doesn't look ready. When he's on the field, the offense slows down. There's hesitation in his reads, a lack of anticipation, and almost no chemistry with his receivers. He looks like a rookie who should be learning from the sidelines, not taking meaningful snaps in a broken offense. The photos show him under duress constantly, just like Shedeur. The difference is that Gabriel doesn't have the same presence or command. And Zach pointed out something important. The Browns don't seem to be helping him either. No simplified sets, no heavy run packages to ease pressure, no true backup plan. Just another example of Cleveland's chaotic approach to quarterback development. Andrew Berry continues to operate in a haze of executive distance, but his fingerprints are all over this mess. Zach Jackson dug into how inconsistent the team-building strategy has become. It's not just about one bad draft. It's about years of trying to rebuild on the fly while never fully committing to a long-term plan. One year, it's defensive heavy. The next, there's a desperate reach for a quarterback. Then a cycle of plug-and-play free agents. Berry's inability to align with the coaching staff has created disconnects across every layer of the roster. Zach questioned whether Berry even knows what kind of team he's building. Is it a run-first group? A spread offense? A defensive powerhouse? The answer changes every season, and that instability bleeds into the locker room, the coaching, and the results. If change is coming at the coaching level, the front office can't be far behind. Continues to carry the burden of being the future without any of the tools to get there. Zach's frustration with how the Browns are handling him is shared by a growing number of analysts. It's one thing to put a rookie in a tough spot. It's another to set him up to fail. And that's what this looks like. No protection, no consistent scheme, and no signs of offensive evolution. The organization says all the right things about Shedeur, but words don't keep a rookie upright in the pocket. Zach brought up how his potential is being buried under the weight of a system that's built for veterans and quick fixes, not long-term development. At this rate, the Browns risk ruining another talented quarterback before he ever gets a real shot to succeed. Myles Garrett has never played better, and that's what makes the situation so frustrating. Zach praised Garrett's leadership, his motor, and the way he's handled the growing media pressure during his sack record chase. But he also called it out for what it is, a distraction from deeper problems. Garrett's dominance is the cover story for an organization crumbling behind the scenes. He's one of the few players on the roster who could start on any team in the league, and yet he's anchored to a franchise that can't capitalize on his impact. Garrett isn't just playing for numbers anymore. He's playing for relevance. And Zach made it clear. The Browns don't deserve him playing at this level if they can't surround him with a team that's ready to win. Dillon Gabriel remains the most confusing storyline of this roster. The Browns invested in him without a plan, and now they're stuck hoping he doesn't get thrown into a game that could derail him completely. Zach pointed out how rare it is to see a player clearly not ready for NFL speed being kept this close to the field. It speaks volumes about the team's quarterback mismanagement. There's no design path for Gabriel, no veteran mentor, no simplified offense. It's just another name on the depth chart that reflects a lack of direction. Zach called it organizational negligence, drafting without intention. That's the kind of decision that doesn't just hurt the present, it poisons the future. Because every miss at quarterback sets you back years. Watching Stefanski call plays against the Bengals was like watching a rerun. Same looks, same breakdowns, same mistakes. Zach laid into how predictable the Browns became, especially in second and long situations. There were no surprises, no tempo changes, and definitely no urgency. Even when Cincinnati backed off, the Browns couldn't take advantage. Stefanski seemed determined to stick to a script that hadn't worked in weeks. Zach's takeaway? This wasn't just a coaching misfire. It was a coach out of ideas. And that's when you know it's time for a change, not because of one bad game, but because every game looks the same. Shedeur Sanders' snaps against the Bengals weren't just difficult, they were disheartening. The offensive line folded early, and Cincinnati never let up. Zach pointed out how Shedeur didn't even have time to make pre-snap reads. He was reacting from the moment the ball was snapped. That's not development. That's survival mode. Zach called the performance structurally doomed, and he's not wrong. There wasn't a single offensive sequence that looked intentional or built to give Shedeur rhythm. The game tape will be studied for missed opportunities, but the real issue is bigger. The system is failing its most important player. And if they don't fix it soon, the damage might be. Garrett came into this game with a record in sight, and the Bengals knew it. Double teams, chips, rollouts away from him, it was all in the plan. But Garrett still disrupted drives, forced hurries, and dominated his matchup for stretches. Zach highlighted how Garrett's presence warped Cincinnati's offense, even if the stats didn't show it. It was another game where Garrett did everything he could, only for the rest of the team to fall short. He's chasing greatness in a franchise that still doesn't know how to support elite talent. The contrast couldn't be more obvious. While Garrett pushes for history, the Browns can't even string together two consistent. Barry's silence is starting to feel strategic, but not in a good way. Zach interpreted it as detachment. A GM who knows questions are coming and doesn't have answers. The cracks in the front office are too wide to ignore. And the fear is that they'll try to run it back next year with minor tweaks instead of the overhaul that's clearly needed. The scouting approach, the resource allocation, the missed evaluations, it all leads back to Barry. And the more the roster struggles, the louder the calls will get. Zach summed it up cleanly. You can't keep betting on upside while ignoring execution. The Browns are all potential, no plan. Still looms over all of this. His game photos are a reminder of the promise that's now a shadow. Every failed drive by the rookies, every questionable coaching call. It all circles back to the decision that changed the franchise's trajectory. And Zach doesn't let that go unspoken. This isn't just about Watson being injured. It's about what the Browns gave up and what they're still trying to justify. The Watson move was supposed to buy stability. Instead, it's been a cloud over every new decision since. And unless the front office can find a way to move past it, they'll stay stuck, dragging down everyone who comes next.